Hello and welcome. I'm the Candyman and you're watching Apoca-Tips on State of Decay 2. That's right, we're back with more Apoca-Tips, the series where we give you, the viewer, tips and tricks on how to better survive the zombie apocalypse. Now, if you have a tip or trick that you feel like would be helpful for other survivors to know, go ahead, leave a comment down below, and you might see it featured in the next video. Now, if you find this video helpful, go ahead, hit the like. Also, consider subscribing as well, and you'll get better at surviving the zombie apocalypse. I promise. Alright, so today's Apoca-Tip is a breakdown of the difficulty options in State of Decay 2. So the goal of this video is to show you what each and every difficulty level in this game has to offer to help you decide which difficulty is right for you. Whether this is your first time playing the game, or perhaps you've completed a legacy and you're trying to decide which difficulty level you should try next. So for each of the 5 difficulty levels in the game, we're going to break it down and talk about 3 different categories, if you will. So the first of which that we're going to talk about is action. So action has to do with zombies, freaks, how blood plague affects your survivors, and any sort of combat aspects of the game. Then we'll talk about community. So that has to do with anything affecting your survivors or your base, as well as crafting and repairing. And then finally, we're going to talk about the map itself. So the amount of resources, gear, vehicles, things like that. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start things off by talking about Green Zone, the easiest difficulty setting in the game. This is great for new players, as well as players who just want to enjoy the sandbox experience State of Decay 2 provides without having to worry about the freaks and blood plague and overwhelming number of zombies. Okay, so the first category that we'll talk about in regards to Green Zone is action. Now, in terms of a point of reference, what we're going to do is for this category, and when we're talking about each and every difficulty level, we're going to compare everything to the standard difficulty. Reason being is that was the original difficulty in the game, the one and only. So it's just a point of reference. If it doesn't make sense, you will understand here in a couple seconds when we start going through everything. So in regards to action, zombies are easier to kill, they deal less damage, they're less plentiful and less aggressive as compared to the standard difficulty, and nearby zombies are going to appear on the minimap. Now, freaks are going to be very rare, plague arts are going to require less effort to destroy in comparison to standard difficulty again, and then blood plague is going to kill survivors very slowly. Now, combat is going to cost less stamina, fatigue is going to accrue slowly, and the noise from combat is less likely to draw zombies. Hostile humans are less deadly in combat, vehicles are stronger, or last longer I should say, and then injuries and trauma are uncommon and less severe. Now we're going to talk about the community category in Green Zone. So fighting and shooting skills improve faster, each survivor consumes only half as much food per day, all survivors are going to receive a bonus to their morale, they don't start fights or waste resources, new recruits may show up at your base, and then influence and standing rewards are significantly increased. Now, facility and outpost costs are decreased. So building and upgrading facilities cost 25% less materials, claiming outposts cost 50% less influence, upgrading outposts costs 25% less materials and 50% less influence. Zombie sieges at your base pose only a limited threat. Food producing facilities and outposts produce extra food, and then vehicles have a higher fuel efficiency. Now, crafting weapons cost less, and weapons last longer before breaking. So the third and final category we'll talk about is the map for Green Zone. So resources are very plentiful, and each rucksack is going to hold anywhere from 5 to 9 units. Now, weapons, consumables, and crafting ingredients are going to be very plentiful, and most vehicles are going to be found undamaged and with gas. Each map is going to include 7 plague hearts roughly, and killed zombies will often drop plague samples. And finally, home sites cost less influence to claim, about 50% less. Next, we're going to talk about the second easiest difficulty in the game. We're talking about Standard Zone. The zombies are going to have average toughness and deal a normal amount of damage. They're also going to be not overly aggressive. They're going to pursue you with normal behavior. They're going to be somewhat common around the map, and nearby zombies are still going to appear on the minimap. So most freaks are going to appear by themselves. Plague hearts are going to pose a reasonable challenge to kill, and then blood plague is still going to kill survivors pretty slowly. So now, combat noise is likely to draw zombies, hostile humans are dangerous in combat, and damage to survivors can cause lasting injuries or trauma now. So the second category we'll talk about in Standard Zone is community. So survivors consume 1 unit of food daily, and if they have low morale, they can cause fights or waste resources. So now zombie sieges are going to pose an occasional threat to your community. Finally, we'll talk about the map in Standard Zone. Resources are going to be plentiful, and each rucksack is going to hold anywhere from 3 to 6 units. Weapons, consumables, crafting ingredients, and vehicles are going to be plentiful as well. Each map is going to have typically about 10 plague hearts, and killed plague zombies are occasionally going to drop plague samples. Now we're going to move on to Dread Zone, where the difficulty starts ramping up a little bit. And we're going to start things off by talking a little bit about what kind of action you can see on this difficulty level. In comparison to Standard, zombies are going to be tougher, do more damage, you're going to see them more, they're going to be more aggressive. Some hordes are going to be extra large now, or they're going to have armored zombies. And zombies no longer appear on the minimap, unless they make noise. You're now going to see freaks in hordes and see them more frequently. All Juggernauts are going to have Blood Plague, Plague Hearts themselves are going to be harder to kill, and Blood Plague is going to kill survivors relatively quickly. Combat actions are now going to cost more stamina, and the noise is going to be more likely to draw zombies, hostile humans are going to be tougher, more dangerous, and vehicles are going to be less durable. Now we're going to talk about how Dread Zone affects your community. All survivors are now going to have a penalty to their morale. Influence gain from skills and facilities is greatly reduced, while influence and standing rewards are slightly increased. Facility and outpost costs are increased. So now, upgrading outposts, building and upgrading facilities all cost 25% more materials. Zombie sieges at your base are a greater threat, and radio commands now cost more influence. Now we're going to talk about the changes to the map when you choose this difficulty. Resources are going to be harder to find, and each rucksack is going to hold 3 to 6 units. Weapons, consumables, and crafting ingredients are going to be harder to find, as well as fewer vehicles on the map itself, and most vehicles that you do find are going to be damaged or destroyed, and then some sites on the map are going to have nothing for you to scavenge or loot. Each map is going to have about 13 plague hearts, and killed plague zombies are now going to rarely drop plague samples. Now we get to talk about Nightmare Zone, where things start getting a little bit grim. First, we'll talk about combat, where things get a little bit more deadly. Now zombies are going to be much tougher, deal more damage, more common, more aggressive. Some hordes are going to be extra large as well, or contain armored zombies. Freaks are much more common and can travel in groups. Bloaters, Screamers, and Juggernauts all have Blood Plague now. Plague Hearts are much harder to kill, and Blood Plague kills survivors very quickly. Combat actions cost much more stamina, noise is more likely to draw zombies, hostile humans are very tough and very deadly, and your vehicles are much less durable. Now we're going to talk about Nightmare Zone effect on your community. So now skills and standing improve at a much slower rate. Each survivor is going to consume 50% more food daily. All survivors are going to have a significant penalty to their morale. And then influence gain from skills and facilities is greatly reduced. And then influence and standing rewards are greatly reduced as well. Facility and outpost costs are increased once again, so building and upgrading facilities as well as upgrading outposts is going to cost 100% more materials. Zombie sieges at your base pose a great threat. Food producing outposts do produce more food, as well as radio commands cost more influence. Items are going to cost more to craft, and weapons are going to cost more to repair. The last category we'll talk about is how Nightmare Zone affects the map. Resources are extremely limited, and each rucksack is going to hold from 3 to 6 units. Weapons, consumables, and crafting ingredients are going to be very limited, as well as there's not going to be that many vehicles on the map, and the ones that are going to be damaged or destroyed, and many sites on the map are going to have nothing for you to scavenge. Each map is going to include anywhere from 17 to 18 plague hearts. And these plague hearts can be found relatively close to each other, and killed plague zombies very rarely drop plague samples. Last, but certainly not least, we talk about the most challenging difficulty in the game, Lethal Zone. First things first, we're going to talk about how brutal and unforgiving Lethal Zone can be when it comes to combat. Any zombie can be a deadly threat, and zombies pursue noise relentlessly. All freaks now have blood plague. Extra large hordes include one of each type of plague freak. Plague hearts are very hard to kill. Destroying a plague heart no longer kills nearby zombies. Blood plague kills survivors very fast. Gunfire draws a bunch of zombies, and vehicles fall apart from very minimal damage. Now we'll talk about Lethal Zone's brutal effects on your community. Skills and standings improve at a drastically slower rate. Each survivor consumes 100% extra food each day. All survivors also have a massive penalty to their morale. Building and upgrading facilities as well as upgrading outposts is going to cost 150% more materials. Deadly zombie sieges at your base are going to be much more frequent. Food producing outposts are going to produce even more food though. Radio commands are going to cost more influence, and vehicles are going to have a lower fuel efficiency. Items are going to cost even more parts to craft, as well as weapons costing more parts to repair. And finally, we're going to talk about Lethal Zone's absolutely brutal effects on the map. Finding rucksacks is going to be hard, and each rucksack is going to hold 3 to 6 units. High-end weapons are almost non-existent. Crossbows are very hard to find. The rare vehicles you find are trashed and need gas. Most houses on the map have nothing to scavenge. Each map is going to have about 28 to 30 plague hearts. Plague hearts can often be found very close to each other, and then killed plague zombies now almost never drop plague samples. Alright, so we will go ahead and wrap up the tips video here. So if you like the video, do me a favor. Hit the like button and consider subscribing as well. As always, spread the love, spread the positivity, and I'll catch you in the next one.